Perfected knowledge and intelligence. Siddhartha, owner of the world. Supreme guardian of living beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the secure from the shackle plan. I prostrate and homage with refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one half beyond the great destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct. Siddhartha, owner of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the secure from the shackle plan. I prostrate thank offerings in your refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond the great destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct. Siddhartha, owner of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the secure from the shackle plan. I prostrate thank offerings in your refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you applaud and said, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I prostrate. Your bodies, all supreme and pure. Wisdom ocean of the golden mountain. Flame that blazes to 3 worlds. Winner of the best, born to you, I prostrate. With the supreme science face like spotless beauty. Color like gold, you I prostrate. Lustrous like you, the 3 worlds I love. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having more understanding. The field of miracles bulges like a vast ocean. To you, one God in vastness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path to sublime reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path of liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three every devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowed with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all sleep, subdue the 12 faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. To page 15 for the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I do at one time. Babylon was dwelt in the lowest mountain in Tibet. Together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration of Category Samvara, or perfection. Also at that time, the bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of living out perfection in wisdom, and beheld those 5 aggregates also as imperfect and completion. Then through the power of Buddha, the venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage astray, who wishes to practice the activity of the Brahman in wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the venerable Shariputra. Shariputra any son of the lineage will hold of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this. Correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as imperfect and completion. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition, factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, form and number are emptiness. Without characteristic, unproduced, unseen, standless, not without stain, not to be fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, emptiness
no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and harm. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Panasamgate, Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice a profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoiced. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadavaputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety along with the world of gods, humans, Asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. To page 25 for the short mandala. Sashi Bhogeshwarshi Metotam Virami Shinindi Sangha Shindu Mideo Ruvananda Shima Cheparasho Jetsalama Dampa Kenanji Jagala Jindi Jindine Jeta Zamedi Jetemala Zake Chuji Chala Patuso Sanje Chedan Soji Chanan Chanju Bada Dani Jasa Take Chijin Jive Sonam Ji Dola Benji Sanje Tubra Sanje Chedan Soji Chanan Chanju Bada Dani Jasa Take Chijin Jive Sonam Ji Dola Benji Sanje Tubra Sanje Chedan Soji Chanan Chanju Bada Dani Dāgī chūjīn jīvē sōnām jī, dōlā bīñjī sāñjī tūpura. Kāngā tēsī yī sāvē, tāwā tēchē pāmē shirī tāmē shēnē tēnzī. Kōtām tē lā chān sē lā, tōngyī yī chē sān tē chē pē lā, chī chē sē tē kāñchē tēnzī. Chānā pē mā tēnzē yā sā lā, sō tē sō shēn tē lūn tū shō, pā tē tē lā mā rā mō shī. Dāgī chī rō pē tē tē shē nē, kō tē chī mē kō nē chī sā. Guzonto jengo doze to so ai da on kulon gomchi jeng da lo ro ne dan da tin da nyen ya di ana su su ji gu to da ma yin ba ne din da nyen di sam no tan te che be ge ana zo ge ye za wa shi sa go re ti ne sim ji shen na pyan ba shi du ya shi ti yin sta ne ni ma ti ne shi shi 아니 가지고 톱도지 로심지신의 펜토가 지금 대체되어 있네. 진짜디 니야다 삼야다 고미야다 지기여 삼백구노. 네 chanjusim kuno simbaji lo.
Listening with the correct motivation of not just oneself, but one will hear, reflect and meditate on the class, accumulate virtues for sentient beings, doing one's best to do this from today on, to benefit sentient beings. So in short, to hear, reflect and meditate with a bodhicitta attitude.
다 가와곰로 다른 이제 셈바상부지 니바치모 셈딘데게니 셈바지 찬주심 깨지기 중앙에 깨버상부야고이 상가와곰로.
Now, rejoicing that if one generates such a warm heart, the power of the bodhicitta just for one moment, it is of great fortune. Rejoice in that.
양절 드린데 양치 문도 젠치 값이와 지 지진 참박하면 송신요 다디 단단한저디 퇴야 좀 된데지 송배 또지 되게 되어 지진 참박하면 송정 문도 젠치 되게 되어 루멘 생성의 제신교기 네 저한테 제시 되게 되어라 나는 상상의 제로머진 제리시에신 용거를 상상은 지진 참 지진 계절을 뭐진 제외 남신인지 용거를 내가는 단단한 저 배제돼 지진 추견진 이 되어제신요 아데베 되더니 된대게다 지구 담바디게게 네 송기 친랍된데 지가 저 제야 총어디 뭐네 교상고래래다 인바디 시오래서
Yes, yes.
상상은 공부를 두기 shum진데 다행보다 돼
Yeah.
어디
That we can listen to this teaching actually coming from Lord Buddha, this 4th chapter on the Ornament of Clear Realization was composed by Maitreya, but also coming from sutras of Lord Buddha to Maitreya, and then latterly down through Singhi Sangpo, this lineage, including Lama Tsongkhapa's essence of like gold, refined gold, down to Gyaltsab Je, and then to the current commentary we have, Jitsen Chugi Gyaltsen. So it's like the commentaries coming down, commentaries of commentaries, that we have gotten this blessing due to their holy speech. Those holy beings' speech is very fortunate, and often in the text, Nagarjuna is alluded to as well.
어디 가고 다디 저 저름치 나랜드 트디션에 사이드 줌젠데 낼데네 송고래요.
We can rejoice, and that's why His Holiness always alludes to the Nalanda tradition because of that.
아야 당도 단다 참디 아니 데스티리고 가서 단당한서 뭐마다 또뭐 좀 된데 네상 예심베지서 넘버산je 외출 다스여디 잠불림 토마체라로
Yeah.
체인데 장가라 다 또뭐 좀 된데 그런 당부 추규디 힘들어와
Yes.
안데 제라다 또뭐 좀 된데 상제는 베데 낭베게 렌데 남샤 당 다오 딘중 당 저거 처음에 남샤 직 치운디 아니 힌두기 개버도 좋다 데 메시고 소라 마데오로 chen
Yes.
아니 티워티네 티워 먹고 쉬우지 지난데 힌두기 아니 두다 차와 지 장변에서 아니 장제인 바스야로 주바스야로 네 제가 네마보아스야로 다도저 아니 같이 시간 먹었어요. 다 근데 망부지 요로. 저도 디자인으로 시오 망차로데 시로 저래다로.
Ragisna.
아 디제기 아니 두더지니 그 로맨도 저기 아니 좀 된데라야 티워티니로.
Yes.
아니 티워티워디 아니 토네다 중된조들라야 다 땅에 지제들라 축주잡 시체야로. 땅에 주시체야로. 근데 용도도
Yeah. Tukchureni chuchuk tukshir wadi.
주시 네 되네 되나야
She.
시 된대 연구도
Yeah. So, at the time when Lord Buddha obtained Buddhahood and came to this world, let's say the Hindu view was prevalent at that time, and latterly Lord Buddha set forth the teaching of the Buddha doctrine, the law of behavioral cause and effect, the teaching on ahimsa, non-harming, and the teaching on the lack of intrinsic nature of things. But due to that teaching, a lot of the contemporary teachers could not bear that teaching. So they would ask questions, not accepting that teaching. So then the main groups of these forwarders, if you will, or let's say sometimes called outsiders, they're like the Samkhyas, the Lokatyas. Let's say in English then, the enumerators, then the Travakas, this is on page 136, and then we had others like the Jains, we call the naked ones, and then the Vaibhashikas, the Vaisheshikas. Anyway, these mainly were four, and the kind of sages of those tenets would ask Lord Buddha questions, around these views, and because of that, there were like these 62 views that were recognized to be bad views, if you will, and then they can be condensed into 16, 14, and 4, primarily 4. No.
재단 대다게 네 당고 수수 다디와 풍불의 텐시베 다 여거 시샤 제제네 직된 타요레 타요마레 아니 도서 티워디게 티워 주주자니데 되면 인상 로마데니 따와 주주자니시 다 티워디게 수 되는데 로마데니 따와 주시스 제제네 우제제 다 저디 티워티인데 다 요거 시샤게 토네 티워당
Right.
직된지 감데 다 요바 되게 롱제제 임바 시샤 셰운데 좀 된데게 될야 오늘은 다 요마로와 이 린 잡초고요를 될래 레마 제데 가르스나 콘조 아마 힌두기 두다마 선자 콘조 좀 된데 이송바디 캘린시게요 말에 지메비 인자 렌 잡이 있는 고바요 말에 제가 안델라 레마 잡이 인자 아니래 레마 잡에 따와서 룸마딩기 따와서 시라고 룸마딩기 따와서라고 김제디 어디라고요 레스로
So these tenet holders of non-Buddhist are believing in a self that is separate or not connected to the aggregates, and 62 kind of views stem from that. But really, that's coming from basically the view of the truly existent self and the world that is used by such a self or produces it. But of course, Buddha said that there is no such a self, in fact, in reality. And then the question was, why would Lord Buddha not answer some of those questions? Well, the reason he would not answer was because those Hindu followers would not accept Lord Buddha's answer. So that's the reason they are called unspecified views.
어디지? 다디네. 다 롱마든지 따오 줍시디 마찬가지로. 다디게디 주주전이디 수두요나 줍시난 수두로라. 다디 마시.
Ale chuchuk di kosumra nagajuna.
거.
Chupshi chuchuk tang chupshi niki yorwa di tangpo chupshi gosuna. Tigre.
줍시도.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay. So we've been through on page 134 the 16 views, the two sets of 8 of there being a former and latter limit according to them. But now we can also condense them on page 135 at the top into 14.
줍시 체온도는 원지 탈라덴바시 치메달라덴바시 냥게델레 탈시 네 르단 소르 덴바니체 줍시 체송아
네.
아데 네 디니레 간다 편제 타서단 따로서는 영어도 자와디체 디콩체
좋아.
다디레 당본이 있어봐 네 원지 탈라덴바시디 네 가르스나 다단 직된 딱바다와다 덴바다와다 미다바다와다 덴바다와 시스로 다다단 직된스도 다데 항상 다시로 직된스도 뇌기 직된데 그다가 롱제제로 안도서 딱바르베 덴바토르베 사직체 야 미다거레 덴바메거레 덴바다워레스로 디 제운디 시차송하데 예 등원이
Okay. So then there are 4 based on a former limit when we break them down, 4 based on a latter limit, 4 based on nirvana, and 2 based on body and life. Then under that we have the source, or like the quote from Nagarjuna. But then going into the first set of 4 that are based on a former limit. So such beings, the first set is thinking that the self and the world are permanent, are truly existent. The view that the self and the world are permanent is true. The view that the self and the world are impermanent is true.
Yeah, and
then the latter 3 and 4, the view that the self and the world are both permanent and impermanent is true. And the view that the self and the world are neither permanent nor impermanent is true. So the second set of 4, based on a latter limit, the view that the self and the world possessing a limit is true. The view that the self and the world not possessing a limit is true. The view that both are true, and the view that neither is true.
somebody treveta 총편제 di 총화래 있어. treveta's 냥엘에 또 코올에 타요 냥엘에 냥대 톱도라. 냥대 톱도도 아니 총편제도 총화래 미총화래 있어. 다 냥엘에 대부사는 용화 요래 용화 요 말했어. 아니 니가 많이 말했어. 총편제 총화도 미총화 니가래 니가 많이 말했어 이제.
The next 4 views are based on the liberated state, or nirvana, the liberated state out of cyclic existence, the view that the liberated self will arise after that it has passed away, the view that the liberated self will not arise after passing away, the view that it is both, and then finally the view that it is neither, making 12 till now.
그럼 유원에야 줍된 주시 이거로 유중원에 자자자단 바 줍된 주시 덴바다세야 돼 덴바토 시거라.
So remember, all of these are coming from the vantage point of thinking they're inherently so, truly existing as so.
다디 얘네 somebody 시와디 루소 제타데 덴바다와단 제주도 덴바다. 지난데 덴바다세데 지난 루단서 안다 라루체나 제지로 모지로 이나야 덴바를 봐대 타데다 직디도 봐대 요 말아 디 뒤운 거요 다데 뒤워티고 건지로.
Right, so in general the next two, the view that the body and life are different substances is true, and the view that the body and life are one substance is true. Here, although in general the body and life are related, are connected, here they're taking them to be truly existent in their oneness.
되게 줍시 두단듯이 다 이제 수 실로 되는데 아니 니와 두시도 탐제 두는 요와든 두와든 담바든 준비 루마든 있다와 시도 그래서
Now, next we come to summing it up on the next page, 136. When all of these are condensed or subsumed into four, the unspecified views of fluctuating, collected, spread out, gathered.
다행히 갑디 땅해기 여와셰와다 두와셰와서 이제 니와디 투세마셰로 다 숨바 간상 관계 임바 따와디게데 간상 가레레스 여와시디 니 간상 대전수수 되게 대전 시디나나 두르고요.
Yeah. So our first, remember at the beginning of these wrong or bad views, we had like the divisions, and then we had like the summation of it, or the condensation. Now we come to the person, in other words, which views belong to whom? Third set.
숨바니세요. 숨바들이. 다데 다단 지데 딱바다와 덴바다와 타다미 덴바다와 겨치마 편제도 중앙다와 디시지부 통편제도 중앙다와 숨네 장쟁게 다오래서와 장쟁 다시 장쟁세데 니 치료 장쟁바 다 딜래야 디중앙서 상원주 켈레니스도와 어디 만자 장쟁래 장쟁 장쟁딜라 디제니요래 장쟁 하제당 하면서 상원주 켈레니지다 상원주 켈만레니 장쟁이 용어요와 어디 시기요래선.
So first we come to our first set of the four. Remember we said there were four main tenets. This one is called the enumerators or the samkhyas. And they hold to those views that the self and the world are permanent and that is true. The view that the self and the world do not possess a limit, that is, they will arise in or after the next rebirth, and the view that a tathagata will arise after passing away is true. So, they're called enumerators because they mainly follow Wangchuk. Wangchuk is it Brahma?
Shiva.
Shiva.
Hindu, Sanskrit Shiva sigura.
Shiva. Anyway, there is two sets to these believers. One that believe there is a God and one that doesn't believe in a God.
지난디 당고 먼저 여와시나는 여와세들이와 그래서나 롱마den이 따와시들 대남라 여외 롱마den이 따와시죠 긴제거나 대남라
율라 줍바
라율 두베 남베 주보레세운데 유 따디 김제직래와.
Now, why are they called fluctuating? Because they're of the view that things are established in an affirmative way, or they engage in things in an affirmative way. Fluctuating.
딜라 아니 딜라고요래. 원조게 르 요왕문도 성화나 때네. 최담제 두레. 최단 르 왕게 르 요베 왕게네. 고 두비인자 아니 라율라 니 먼저 잘라든데 무슨지 통하다. 텐데나시 주두고 예빈자 아니 두베남베 주고레. 최담제 원조게 르 요레스. 아니 타도나 아니 원주의 셈기 파트웨이션 요장자레세도 나간조 컨조카시 셰도 타도나 아니 셰바 참무지 요레 디간을 찾아는 팀도 그러려고도 어디시고 장제 아니 하제에 되게 따로 시기요데.
So they are setting forth the view of this God that establishes things in an affirmative sense through the direct cognition or the direct seeing of it. But really the fluctuating and affirmative way is that they believe that this God, this primary God, kind of emanates, if you will, all phenomena.
아데나 미다고다 당 타다 미덴베다 겨와 편제데 겨와 치마 편제데 미심에다 지신시고 통 편제데 미심에 덴바다 숨니 장배게 따와레서와.
Now we come to the Jangpempas or the Lokatayas, Shavakas. the view that the self and the world are impermanent, the view that the self and the world possess a limit, that is, they will not arise in or after the next rebirth, the view that a tathagata will not arise after passing away is true. They're the collected, the second set of the four.
다 딜라 두웨 테남라 아니 두웨 룸마데 타와 시고레스 김제 가르스나 테남 라윤라 주루데 각바게 남베 테마임바나 남바 세네 겨왕아지 요마레스 조용다 고 겨와 디미시 요마르라디 겨왕아지 파까제 겨왕아지 메베다니 겨왕아지 요마레스 두비용고다고 자 각바게 남베 주루 유라
So they're called the collected because they engage in their view of the phenomena in a negative way by entering into things in a negative aspect. So negating past. 겨왕아지
요마레스 오래 세디미시 겨왕아지 켈렌시 요마고
Yeah, so they won't believe in past lives. Say dimata yomaris.
요마레스 참마 무슨 찍고 켈렌가 다 딩상 그 체릭보다 오래지래 체릭방 무슨 찍고 미시 켈렌 찍으면 알아 체릭방 무슨 영화도 미시 켈렌 찍으면 와
Right, so only believing what they can see, like the scientists in some sense.
마동바디 제디 켈렌 찍이 다 데려와셔다 디체 이제 건서 겨왕아지 캐만에다 줌제로 어디 딱 권한주 이게 그생 여지 로송아 가셔지 네 하네마 표지 겨울내 주장가라 네 수수게 타게 즉 상다단 부구단도 란자 대대여로 다 겨왕아지 면도 시야면도 깨면도 란자를 시야시지 그런 중무시 그것도 기다 나르게 미디게 대대고 나르게 하도 대대고 하디 체릉 물어 하시고 대기여로 하시나 레이션 제가 겨왕아지 면도 우스다 겨왕아마 면도 가면은 치마 용어 말아라
The karisam nyama gilad is the dead. So one of these views comes because when they develop clairvoyance and they see other gods in their retinue still being the same as they were, then they adhere to their permanence, that they won't take another rebirth.
니가 임바단 템바타와 숨니 지부베 세디 레준데 켈링기요레로 이나야 고다 켈링기요로 통불레 다 켈링기요 템바도 켈링기요 알렌데 켈링고도 하든데
켈링기 찬염
딜라야 담베 넘버 타와 시차데 거두니 찬염데 주베 차네 아니 콜야다 담바스라고레스
The next, or the third group, are called the naked ones, or the Jains, and their key is spread out and said so because they do believe in a self and they do believe in karma, but they believe equally in affirming and negating. So that's kind of more spread out. Yeah, the Jains believe in past lives, future lives, and they believe in engaging in their objects through both affirmation and negation. Now this next set, the three views that are neither limits are expressible as true, are views of the Vatsitiputriyas, and they are the unspecified views of the gathered because they negate both affirmation and negation.
제가 뒤에 지라고도 가려고 그래서는 가루니가 바까지 최대 그런 원에 수신하게 내버려져 저 탐절로 하면 내가 믿다고 그랬어 타둑다고 그랬어 봐 먼저 퍼와다 저 상황 단데 내가 퍼와 차도고 요래 야 상상의 퍼외제의 상상의 신차도고 그러잖아 이나 이거는 제 퍼와체로 세전이 세로 지가요 말고 뭐 담제 란시 따고레스 내가 타데 내가 믿다고레스 제가고 디샤고요 단다 지라고도 된데 샤
Yeah, so there, negating both affirmative and negative, because they say that, the nature of things is permanent, but from time to time they're impermanent. So they can have two views of the one cup, that it is, its real nature is that it's permanent, but from time to time it's impermanent. Yeah.
그래서 지라고 이제 첩사고 열다로.
They're quite funny.
거래.
But they have really like strong motive reasons.
그래서는 포바 당분간서 어디 포바세 친구가는 신기해 말아라.
Yeah.
아니 그래서 파마도 디 포바를 슬라비나. 아니 치스 포바직 통인데 포바레스 양자 포바 상물라 디 포바레 라고문다로.
Yeah.
아니 남사직 통인데 디 포바레 신기도. 디 신야데 코 상물라 참여데 참물라 주도 얘기. 딱과가 누가지 요래서 그러나 어디 포바세야도 상말라 요래서 포바니 때 딱과래서 내가 그 직도 그래 주어도 그래 때미다 그래서 딜라고 요래 건데 상말 쉬우다 요르다 건데
Like when a child doesn't know cup first, and the parents tell the child it's a cup a couple of times, and then whenever they see a cup from then on, there's no need for the parents to say that it's a cup anymore, because whenever the person sees the cup, that cup, that cup has permanent qualities in and of itself, even though it's temporarily changing.
먼저 남북에 내 말에 먼저 똑배게 나와디 네 단지 똑바디 나와디 되는 유진디 나와디 타니 시기오르면서 유코란 경우는 수시에디 시작이요 말하시다.
Yeah. But from the Buddhist perspective, it's different, because our appearance of the cup comes from the subjective side of the mind that's labeling it through language and conception.
이장란저 지다 럽존 자이나 그레이나레 당고 럽럽럽데 셈난 템바샤 아니 템바데 템바샤나 안젤라 디 텐투도 미디 미직 민라 차샤비나로
Yeah.
지지레다 슬라빈데
Stable.
팅마 당보데 녜 두면도 알아.
Yeah.
근데 유코랑은에 이나 때 팅마 당보 통은데 하고 그래 거두면도 와. 양자야자세 텐네 템바데 템르 차도 아니 미디 민디 녜 두고제 어다 데레스 아니 람상 랍투야 텐투야 신도야 용보다 데 또베 나와디 템바데마 된게 저와 용데 또보다 저와요데 낭베 지시디 자고 근데 유코랑은에 주 요레스.
All right. So this school are positing that, something is truly or inherently from the object side, but from the perspective of Buddha Dharma, when we study something, then our mind is able to recall that thing through constant familiarity with the object. So you become familiar with the object through hearing the name again and again. At first you can't recall somebody's name, but after a while you can recall. They would say that is from the side of the object, but actually it is from the subjective mind side that is able to, with mindfulness, recall the object through language and conception.
다른에 루소 대직도 템바다와데 치다고 줄래 요래서 그래. 루소 대직도 템바다와서도 템바다서 딕틱 캐셔머리 템바다서도 템바토 하나 때문에 템바토 그래서 오라.
And the view that they are different substances is true, exists in the continuums of the view that the body and life are one substance is true, exists in the continuum of the Vaisheshikas.
다 루단 소제 타데도 템바다와데 아니 장징 줄래 요래서.
But our first school, the enumerators, they think that those two, body and life, are different substances.
다 지라베 간산데 다데 속 편별한시. 간산가 다스데 속 편별한시 되고 그래서 지라베 편보 다 세야데
Pemboranshins. So the first one we alluded to, the Vaisheshikas, they assert that the self of persons is form by nature, matter.
다 되진스러와 장진배 시르기 다 시르기 지고서.
Right, whereas the enumerators assert that it is a knower consciousness. Tila keling in Dintarwadi. No.
세상 다니 간상게 다단서 고 다니 간상게 다서야지 아니 랑제외제 다 하나 되면이네 풍불의 텐신배다 랑제외자 텐데지를 군데 다디 두다 치루 힌두가 두다 창막인데 결론식이요.
Right. Now, when at the bottom, when it says self, as in self of persons, remember, we're alluding to like an autonomous self or a self that is distinct or separate, unrelated to the aggregates, their basis from this Hindu perspective.
세상 간상게 다단 직된디 롱제저죠. 뇌가 직된여로.
Yeah.
먼저 강바다 추다도 그 롱제제 세상 다의 롱조보다도 더 인자 아니 롱칸제에서 롱제제 아니 덴버투가 따고고요로.
And then the world is the vessel, the vessel, meaning that the society, the things we use. So because you have a truly existent notion of self, then that commensurate world or environment also has to be truly existent.
이제는 뇌지네데 퇴외 다서네다 코월레 퇴외 다디 디시시베장 간상게 다가 남단스도 그래서 제가 퇴외다 양내를 퇴외다 지담 다디 디시시고스 먼저 넘버 산제베장 간상다 다서 탄예디 지고치고요래 민디 지고치기야래 될 탄다 주는 되게요 말다 힌두다 인데 이 넘버 코란을 다서야 되네 탄예 다디 지고치기야로 와가서야 지고로 와 이나야 네 낭베나래 란제도에 제다 켈리니 아니 다 랑원으로 켈리니 아니 다 덴버도 켈리니 낭보 산제고 코나래 다데 되단데 요르다래 힌두파 샤시로
So the liberated self is a tathagata, whereby even its enumeration of the self is the self of persons. So leave aside the non-Buddhists, even within the Buddhist tenets, they can allude to various degrees of a self. You know, some might say the self exists in a subtle way, substantially existent, and so forth.
니메드 때에 된스도 류단 소제 직단 제타데 카야마이니 다니디고 커스나 란신달라 내가 미다고레스다 데라고 세단 데라고 란신달라 내가 쫓쫓던 좀 단지 란신데 따버리 내가 미다고레스죠 셰용고 어디 라고도데
And then the meaning of the view of not two is to view the nature as permanent and its occasional states impermanent. So really, they say that functioning things are by nature permanent, but occasionally impermanent. Now, etymology.
시버다시 테나라 루마데니 따와싱에서 당기 랍상 따와서 루마데니 따와스게 요레스타 다데시오라 테나라 루마데니 따와시죠 진제 예데 대다게 지다스미 좀 된데를 슈베에서 권한제 셈나라 샤르된 요고 요요된 요도 나와시 수수 켈렌데 좀 된데를 야 슈브레스 슈브레스 안딜라 렌 루마데니 테레스 가서 렌 루마데니 왜 줌젠 가레라위나 아니 대다 간상게 다음에 왔다 계시 렌 잡나 다 간상 다 요마레 라고 그래서 아니 이나야 콘서게 아니 다음에 되면 뇌들은 그 매번 인상 아니 레마자 육샤래서 투월 렌룽마된 차이 줌젠데레서 온다
Why unspecified? Because the question would have been asked from the vantage point of a person's true existence, but because the person lacks that true existence, no answer was given because it would have harmed that view, or they would not have been suitable, so not specified.
지나 간시인데 간상 다음에 롱데베 관시 당보도데 슈어분은 간상게 다 달래 잠디 추어슈레스 줌제 당보데 간상게 다음에 되면네 딜 렌동고 간시스 다당 줌제 니셰라 줌제 당보데 가르스는 슈어부데다게 케시 간상게 달래 잠제 다 요베 시샤체
cling to
된 따버레 미다레 셰운데 따티고 치시 다디 요베 시샤 셰용으로 줌제 인자 어디 줌제 직데레스라
Right, so there's a reason for not specifying the answers. It's because, number one, those answers must be shown by means of showing the selflessness of persons. Remember, the beings asking the question are clinging strongly to the notion of a truly existent self of person, whether that be permanent, impermanent, or so forth.
지단 데다 쇼부드는 가상 담에되면 뇌의 미루의 균제 가서는 오머는 제통을 직된 타단 대남시 슈네 겨와미송 슈스
Voilà.
다단 직된 타다 덴버에 타다면 좀 된들이야 송버레스 좀 된데길 말렘 마자버레스 균제 가래서나 간지 대다 사회치 뉴멘돌라미스 간지 균제 가래서나 아니 대다 단다 치료가 두다 대다 아니 최사모 덴베 뇌의 도구요 말레스 균제 된데 인자 좀 된데지 렘마 송버레스 지단다 좀 된데 탐제 시기요레스 이나야 콘솔로 마송의 균제 가서나 건조역에 좀 된데 송버데 캘렌치도 매우 인자 한 던다요 말에 디지털라를 했었다. 디지털라 담 고난주 디지털라 좀 된데 디지털라마다 카가 유샤 다가란 차르다. 디리다 좀 된데
The second, those who pose the questions were not suitable vessels for the teaching on the selflessness of persons. The first is established because those who pose the questions ask the questions stemming from the self of persons as their basis, and then Nagarjuna's source from Precious Garland. When asked whether the world has a limit, the victor remains silent. So why? Why was nothing said? Because there would have been no benefit in answering this question with the premise of them believing in a truly existent self. Harm would have occurred. There would have been no meaning. It would have wasted time.
어디네. 다드네 랑룩라 류단 소 제타데 드미드들이야. 랑룩데 류소 제타데 드바데 캘렌치 말했을다. 덴바투마도 타니 개요 말지당 안한주 류단 소 세저라.
네.
디직션이야 왜요라.
네. 티스코아 디카리 아예 어제 양게르 기슬라
류단 소 랑룩라 제타데 제직레스디라니 제타데 캘렌치 말했을. 코니 제직이 이나 덴바트베 제직레스 말와 덴바마투와
랑룩라
다다 우마라 유루시야 초라
랑룩라 제당 루 덴바투
류단 세 덴바투마 인자 제직레스타
So from our perspective then, coming back to this point on the view of the body and one life being one substance on page 136, it's good to look at this. Because from the point of view of the middle way autonomous school, the body and the life force are one, but not inherently one.
다 가래서도 소시에디 룽레스르와 룽인자 룽디 르기치다레스다 르기치다이나 아니 르단 제지 용으로에스다 균진디 시고
Why are body and life force said to be of one entity, or of one, the same? Because actually you have body and then you have life force, and life force is wind, and wind is an attribute of body, or like a branch of it, so they are one. Because wind is an instance or a particular of body, we can say they are one substance.
지난주 소시에디 아니 룽인 인단데 파진테벨로 데셰디 라카고 쇼레
Yeah.
이나야 나가 로그 도단디 지난데 데다요 말데 나가 디셰다 따다 두고 먼저 롱당 셈 뭐지 시게요라 아니 먼저 셈 참모지요라 셈 참모디 아니 고변안에 파던디 미리 시워 켈렌지고라 제가 셈 참모디 숑버지에 롱지요라 셈디 숑버지에 롱데나 셈 참모디니 뭐지요라 제가 텐데게 셈 참모 숑버지에 롱디 가르디 셈 참모디 가르고라 셈 참모디 가르디 미리 시도고요라 제가 소 가디 미시도고요서 줌데데 다디 등하단 대용디 빼다다고라 빼야고 쉬우지 거디 리투고요라
We can understand the connection of the life force and the body, or actually the life force being wind. It is difficult to explain it from the perspective of the Prajnaparamita Sutras. But from the tantric perspective, we can understand it. We should probably not mix the two up. But because from a tantric perspective, we talk of wind and mind as one entity with that inseparability. So, for example, or the two isolates of the one. So, for example, from a tantric perspective, when the subtle mind separates from the body, it has to ride on the subtle wind, and that constitutes death. So that life force that we've been talking about then is like that wind. Yes.
지난달 먼저 룽라 걸어 삼다나 욱디 욱파단 취마다나 시루다라.
Yeah.
아니다. 뭐가마 오다그라 욱디 루 소디 룽레세야데 욱디 소리 튕겨와.
Yeah.
티레면도 가서나 욱디 채널 미리 시그면도 와다.
Right.
뭐마가디 파르진다데디 녜단다 소 룽레세야데 당아서 소자 룽세야데 먼저 미디 욱파단 욱수담도나 아니 시루다.
Yeah.
하디 욱디다 소리샤 된소아 티레면도 가서나 욱디 당삼 샤자네 단도 미디 시그면도 알아.
Yeah.
제단다 단다 나단 데와 잡이오나 다다도 빼야고도.
Right. So I used to think that the breath was like the life force, and from the perspective, because we were studying from the perspective of Prajnaparamita, the sutras, but that's not necessarily the case, because in one sense, when the gross breath has ceased, the person dies. But there are cases where the person lives on within that body, the life force remains. So it can't just be the breath. The life force has to be this subtle wind. No.
아야. 다디 뒤송하다 따와 당연히 두바시 땅을 그래. 다디네 시시기 좋아시 되베지 남시기 좋아시 된시거든요. 다제 들어셔너라.
So then probably that brings to a conclusion these erroneous views. And now the knowledge characteristics. The applications of knowers of paths. We've just been through knower of basises and the continuum of bodhisattva.
다딜라야 참자와 저 숨체. 다 참자스디 당부 시시기 조베 오디 남시 조 셰고베다 금쟁 가래 라면데 깨베림베 온디시니시 당부 시시기 조와지. 근데네 남시기네 조와지게 요레스 셰고다.
So first we make a connection between the two of a knower of basis and a knower of paths. Then there's the root text and commentary. In terms of making a connection, as it explains, page 138, there's a reason for explaining knowledge characteristics of the application of a knower of paths after the characteristics of the applications of a knower of basis. That's how they're generated.
다디도 시시 저라나데 시라코든 이음도 앞에나서 당보 남시 저라 돈이도 별로 되더라. 돈이도 별로 남다 소람 저람도 되더라.
Yeah.
돈이도 쳐다면 더라. 돈이도 별로 당보 그래. 당보 간산 다음에 또 오다.
Yeah.
저는 당보 간산 다음에 또 오라. 간산 다음에 마도나 돈이도 동었던 또 두고요 말이시다.
Yeah.
제가 간산 다음에 또 와디 시시 저라. 제가 시시 저 간산 다음에 또 와디 당보지. 안데 제수 아니 쳐 다음에 또 와지는데 남시 저다 늘 코데오를 쉐위나.
Yeah.
디금제 기회를 말해야 돼. 어디를 스타로.
Yeah, so let's try and get this, put logic to this. The order behind necessarily knowing the base things, or the basis is to be realized and then going on to the paths. Well, here, the aspiring practitioner has to realize the lack of intrinsic nature or emptiness of all things. On the path of accumulation and on the path of training, that's what the bodhisattva is going for. But prior to that, he or she will necessarily have to have realized the non-self of persons prior to that, and then go on to the vaster non-self of phenomena. So therefore you have the basis first, the non-self of person, followed by the non-self of phenomena, which we're on to now. Yeah, so that's just like how you connect the two, the base and the path. No. Yeah, and then you have the root text that backs it up, emptiness along with signlessness and so forth. Yeah. So emptiness along with signless, the thorough abandonment of wishing, production does not exist, cessation does not exist, and so forth. And it goes on. Yeah, so basically what it's saying is that at this stage, the Bodhisattva has to train in 16 characteristics as a knower of paths. And the first of those are training in the fact that things are empty of intrinsic nature. Then their signlessness is the second, and the wishlessness is the third. No. Yes. So the first point of those 16 is understanding the fact that all phenomena lack intrinsic existence. They're empty of true existence. This first.
Yeah, it's
better to say all phenomena are in the nature of lacking intrinsic existence. Their final nature is that they lack inherent existence. Yeah. And that's because we need to qualify that, because actually all phenomena are a relative truth, but their final mode of being is emptiness, which is ultimate truth. Yeah, so it's important we can understand this in the Heart Sutra when we hear the two aspects of the one reality. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Well, the real nature of form is that it lacks true existence. That's the first part, form is emptiness. And the second part, emptiness is form, is saying that apart from being empty, form is just that, because it's of one with it. Right, so the second one is that knowing all phenomena as being without the sign of causes, so pacified of truly existent cause. So we know that all functioning things have a cause, but those causes are not inherently existent. So then the third one, wishlessness, we know that in the resultant sense, the maturation lacks true existence as well, knowing that there's nothing to be wished for in results.
젠댕기 체마소네 시도에네 좀 된데려야 근데 부야게 부버든데 송제네 고 샵니는 차세제네
Ale kushapchena.
구샵체네 라니 태문자제네
Ale
좀 된데려야 다 튜어티리 튜어 거리스나 좀 된데시네 시진 사무디시네 시진 사무디 칸데레다 좀데 저랑 그 시진 사무시 측망부 송고도 오스로 따디 가르레세네 시진 사무디 시진시네 시진디 친이디 치더블라스 야 튜어슈레
So next, coming from Sutra, in order to indicate those first three qualifications of emptiness, all of them as many sons of gods as there are acting in the desire realm and acting in the form realm, in this great thousand of the 3,000 world systems holding divine substances, sandalwood powders, proceeded to where the Bhagavan was, and having gone there, prostrated with their crowns at the 2 feet of the Bhagavan and sat down to one side. Having sat down, those sons of gods asked the Bhagavan, when explaining this profound perfection of wisdom, what are the characteristics of the perfection of wisdom like? Now, Lord Buddha will reply.
시진 사무 디스니 세거라 디스니네 동반이도스 디스니 모디 최던지 시진 사무디 스닝원에디 동반이레스 대자마저 해부간다 시진 사무디니 참마메워 스니니 참마메워레스 시진 사무디니 스니니 맘바메워레스 하던다 도도데 동반이다 참마메워다 맘바메워레스다 단다 시진 사무디 된데 땡겨요레스
So here Lord Buddha replies with the characteristic of the final nature or the perfection of wisdom. He says, sons of gods, the characteristics of this profound perfection of wisdom is emptiness. Sons of gods, the characteristics of this profound perfection of wisdom is signlessness. Sons of gods, the characteristics of this profound perfection of wisdom is wishlessness. So these three are in essence the nature of the profound perfection of wisdom: emptiness, signlessness, wishlessness.
시진 사물라데 가서나 시진이 도 난다. 배정거에서 이제 먼저 대도와대 또 시진 개동당 어도저래 봄당 개동도 시진은 셔런닝보다 시진이래 봐. 시진서 가서나 네 조제민 조제라다고 그러와. 네 동반이 땡게 요인자 아니 돈이도 왜 셔럽들라 아니 셔럽 뒤에나 뒤도기 아니 라니 산제지 공방 파르드 도트바 요인자 아니 시진세 셔럽기 파르드 침바 셔럽기 있으되 다음에도 왜 셔럽기 라니 파르스드 코와 자주 파르 산제지 공방라 도트바 인자 아니 디 죄제 민디 죄제를 야따르 시진.
Yes. Why then is it called the wisdom or the perfection of wisdom gone beyond? Because of what it expresses. So here in the Gompa, we have those texts, those Prajnaparamita texts of the Sutra 8,000, 100,000, and also, of course, the Heart Sutra. And the reason it is called the perfection of wisdom, it is because it expresses going beyond to Buddha's place, to the shore of enlightenment. So when you have that mind that directly realizes the lack of intrinsic nature, by that power you can cross the shore to Buddha's state. So when it says Sherab Ki, it means by the wisdom of directly seeing the lack of intrinsic nature, you cross to the Buddha's shore. Hence, the wisdom of perfection sutras. It's gone beyond. Yeah, even seeing these texts is amazing. Sorry, Heart Sutra. Even saying Heart Sutra. Yep. Oh, yeah. So please, when you recite Heart Sutra, don't let your mind go elsewhere. Everything is in that.
네, 사바로지 가르도 냐냐다 말이지. 이 책도 통담하고 상담다. 아니 사바 딩네라요. 심지어서 저저 딜을하고 지신다 가르도 기겐 신다지 디셀하고 지 가르자고도 디삼다나. 아니 제일 개개면조 차로. 개개면조.
Yeah, please don't think when you are reciting it that you're looking for something new or something that might not be there, like, oh, there might be another teacher out there or something else out there you can find. When you really go deeper, everything is there in the Heart Sutra.
Not good, too much excitement, right? Excitement,
Yeah, and then and then also not be too excited. Then yep.
만화도 상마 단다 강예체 상마데 남다 고성 남샤데 동반이 남샤데 마시베 온게는 아주 꼬라 접지 되대요. 그래서 다 간다. 꼬라 자야 상마.
We've been through these 3 doors of liberation a lot. But the point is it's quite difficult for us to get it. Because we are ignorant of these 3 doors of liberation, we go round and round.
일단 단다 도직나라 파고 유고 좀 시베 돌레로 동바시와 껴와 메베츠 미시번에 도와 참줘봐 동바 시와 껴와스 단다디 남다 구순이 남샤데 미시베 아니 도와 코발라 참도고 그래서 동바시와 껴와 메베츠 미시베니 도와 참줘봐 디 미시와 인상 아니 먼저 도와 코발라 참대요 그래서 대다 투증업에 답주지 리버자다지네 된다 인상 아니 좀 내데 투지 전부 요 인상 아니 리바 좀제 자다 망고 토네네 지 동번이 되나 배워 좀 받지 자든 건절로 송화데 좀된데 툭 제외 첨부고네 건절로 송화를 했으잖아 아디 네 시진이 되다 돈다 상마야 dü르나 되나나 남다 고순디는 dü르 거라
Is the sutra giming?
파고 유고준 시외 도사
Papa Yugosu.
파고 유고준데 지다 좀된데 dü자르와 뒤야 주버시르와
There was one.
먼저 코월에 참여해야지 가래.
Yes.
슈디인데 그런서 간서 코월 참여해야지. 남다 고선데 마시브 인자는 코월에 참석을 해서.
There's a sutra, and it is named after a disciple of Buddha who asked the Buddha, why is it that we wander endlessly in cyclic existence? And then Lord Buddha said, due to not knowing, emptiness, entity, production, sentient beings wander endlessly in the cycle of existence. But then due to his great kindness, Lord Buddha set forth thousands of reasons that those beings would see the truth. Questions? Let's go for it. Yes.
I just wasn't quite clear when you were talking about life force.
Life force, yeah.
Usually gave that the Tantra version is the subtle wind. But I just wasn't quite sure what life force was according to these.
Right, okay, good. So, Kishula tse tang sok se tirwadi. Mari lu tang sok. Ta sanga ki kola ti se barwadi. Te sem dang lung tam shi tewa yorwadi. Ti mayamba vaibasha kajbe. Oh, the question again, yeah. Yeah, so the question was, it wasn't quite clear. It wasn't quite clear about the life force when we're looking at it, not from the perspective of the Tantra, but from the perspective of these, was it the Vaishashikas? And what is the difference between the body and the life force as being one entity or not, according to them? That's the question.
What is life force is the question.
Okay, life force. Okay, life force in the karir is konzo ngola. The tsok say the karir is.
단도 콘조스는 파진테 올라고 그래.
Yeah, 파진테. Yeah, 파진테. konzo 좁다.
그래, 다 파진테 올라 단도 다가나래. 소세데 롱와. 롱세데 당도 수부초 된 거죠,
Yeah.
수부초 찍어만 임바. 다 남시 탐욕기지 마시 나다 마 되버시로. 아니 수부초 되어 찍어만 임바. 남시 냐된죠. 미디 sombo 데트야게 아니 롱지여로. 페이지 두슬람나.
미디 sombo 대토야기 lung di mena midi sombo 대마도 lung di
Okay.
yona midi sombo 대토니기 lung지라 아니 소스기 요레스다 된다 파진 대고게
Yeah, from the perspective of this vehicle, Prajnaparamita, the life force is a wind. So leave aside Tantra view. From their perspective, the life force is a wind that allows the body to be, to live. If that wasn't there, we couldn't be.
대 lung di yona mi sombo 대토라 lung di mena midi 시도니죠라
Yeah.
텐데 lung질 소 lung질라
Yeah. So,
소스기 요레스다
yeah. They say that life force allows the person to exist. Once there is not that life force, the person will not exist.
거르스 텐데 미시다 딜랄 하고 시다도야 뭐 답나라이나 따다 로드고다라 세우쇼다
Yeah, there's not a lot else said on it from that perspective, but it's much clearer from the tantric perspective, isn't it?
지상당알스 베 미시 세우 쇼지도 와다
Yeah. Gisla konzo lula kasila ludang so la sechik vadiri.
세체
Se
소 상무면달
Yeah. Yinayang tisqua. Yeah, ludang se
소
temperature. Ludang se nika sechik.
일단 체 말에 소 가시에서 체셔고래 저디제가 소세야다 체세야도 되면다셔 체세야다 미 무슨 보대야게 내제들 체세고라다
Mare zechik tang ze tadi labgi.
알레오 제지그레
데데데.
제지임에 준제 가서나 소디 룽레도 와스 룽디 아니 류지 치다레스잖아 류지 치다니자 아니 그 뭐지그래 뭐보이는 뭐지는 제지인 거래서 어디 시고래
Right, so then the question is, why would they believe that the body and the life force are one substance? Because the wind, vis-a-vis the life force, is a particular of the body, like an instance of it. So therefore they believe that.
베나서 저한테 저지 거는 베나 탭디도 와
Yeah.
탭디 녀디 탭 첨부시도 와
Yeah.
탭 첨부디 아니 뭐보게 치다로 뭐 치다이나 탭디다 뭐보니 제지로 와
Yeah.
지단 치다니디 뭐지 제지래 자다 한기 소디 류기 치다서면서 아니 소다 류니디 제지 차브레스타 남마산제베 템버드베 제지만 이제 제지래서 그래 안다 탭당 뭐보 님은 가나도 미다 아니 부당 아니 미니 뭐 제지래로
Yeah.
부모다 아니 부모셔야 돼요. 먼저 디 가서 그래. 미당 제지래. 지라인자 지단 지라더니 제지 뭐지.
Yeah, this is talking about general and particular things. Like the book is within the class of thing. So you would say it is like one in one class or one substance. Not truly, but in one class. So that is similar to body and life force. They are of that same instance, well, a substance it says here, not truly, but like that. Yep.
Well, I'm just because that's a bad view, isn't it? That's one of the bad
Yes,
views.
that is a ditawa.
But it seems like it's not completely wrong.
Yes.
You know, we're saying the subtle wind, the life force, and they're saying the wind is life force.
Yeah, konza de tawa di onichene tanibarawa di sanga ki tawa dang tanibarawa di. Ini yang konza dembar drupa zimbarwa di.
dembar drupa di lamna ane tigo mata.
Yes, that's right. If you say that they exist truly, it's wrong. And they are believing they exist as one truly, inherently.
Oh yeah, that there Rangjong di ane tawa chupsi shi ane tiye ma chedan tiye che ane di gangla ya namda kusum chadan tiye woshina ane digdorwa ane sodan luni ngochik doba tade hindan di gangla keji de shena ya udara
it is good to go over during the week the 14 or these 62 views subsumed into 14 and then down into 4 with those 4 relating to those 4 tenets. Be clear on them and then go through the 3 doors of liberation that we've just been through, which began with our knowledge characteristics of a knower of paths. And then the connection between body and life force. It's good to know that too. We'll dedicate.
Page 31 for the short mandala.
Pashe Joshe Meta Tra Rira Lingji Ni De Gen Parati
Sangye Jingdu.
Tembe Dweme Sasumji Dweme Seta Ne Juchi Guru Rane Mindela Kandiyataya.
Page 33, prayers of dedication. Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the stage of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen more and more. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created, by paying homage, offering knowledge of my thoughts, rejoicing and requesting that the Buddha's stay and teach, I now dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with a dedication raised as a best, by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble bodhisattva's